Hi there, and thanks for joining on another one of these review videos. Today we've got this Märklin Hobby model. It's number 3091 and it's a P8 Baden 460 steam locomotive. This is another second-hand purchase of mine. This box is looking not too bad at all. It's got a little bit of staining up here, probably some water damage. I'm not quite sure what's happened there, but it's not too bad. On the back here it says a few things about this model. It has a metal frame and body, which is really cool. It has 3 axles which are powered. And it has the triple headlights at the front which light up, which is great. And it also has a cab with engineer and fireman. I guess they're already fitted to this model. And you can see here that it is designed to be used on the Märklin 3-rail system. So we're going to have a look at this today. So you can see there that we had a cardboard sleeve and then a cardboard tray, and inside that we have this plastic packaging that holds the locomotive very firmly. It has a plastic outer sleeve and the packaging inside, but you can see, like with many older Märklin models, that this packaging sometimes becomes brittle and discoloured. And while this packaging doesn't seem to be brittle, it certainly is starting to get discoloured here as it's going a kind of brown coffee colour, and so this is probably heading down the same route. This seems to be a problem with all older Märklin models. This plastic packaging starts to degrade and then fall apart, so it's something to be aware of if you're interested in getting these models. So here we have the model out of the packaging, and sure enough it is quite heavy. I guess it's that all metal construction, but you can see that it does actually look like quite an attractive small steam locomotive, and it's got a lot of nice features and character about it. But let's have a look at it in more detail. So looking here at the front of the locomotive, you can see that the all metal construction does have some limitations in terms of the amount of small detail it can have compared to plastic models, and that's evident here on the buffer beam. Although that said, you can see some rivet detail there and some other bits and pieces. It is painted red, and you can see that it is a little bit glossy, which is not really prototypical, and certainly these things got very dirty as well on steam trains in real life. So this could benefit from some matte varnish if you're bothered about that. You can see that being metal, it has these little steps coming down here, and they're quite robust as well. They're not going to snap off like they would if they were made of plastic. And you can also see here the red continues with some more rivet detail underneath the smoke deflector. So looking at the front of the boiler here, you have the arrangement with 3 lights, and you can see the number printed very clearly there, 3553. And there's also detail of the hatch and hinges for the front boiler door there. This doesn't open, but it certainly looks quite convincing, and there's a little bit of a ridge here as well between it and the rest of the boiler. I think that's meant to be prototypical. You can see even more rivet detail here, a nicely presented chimney up here as well, and you can see the pipework moulded into the metal all the way down the side of the boiler. There's a lot of pipework on this locomotive, which is very prototypical of German steam locomotives, and it's all detailed here on the side of this model. You can see here that there's a lot of detail in this piston part here as well. And as we start to move down at the top of the locomotive, you can see this red part painted on here all the way along. That's been done really well. There's no fuzziness between it and the black. And here at the cab, you can see some more printed numbers and the Deutscher Reichsbahn as well. There's no glazing in these windows, but there is rivet detail around them on the moulding, and you can see the driver window here with a hood over it. And then looking up top, you've got the whistles here, still part of the metal moulding, and you can see other detail along the top here. And here is a screw. I guess that holds the 2 pieces together of this model. We'll take it apart and have a look at the mechanism in a little while. So looking at the cab, apart from the dusty floor, it's looking not too bad. There's some detail on the back of the boiler there. It's quite nicely presented, but there isn't a huge amount of it in this cab. And also missing is the driver and fireman, so I guess they must have run off somewhere, or maybe they're away on their holidays or something like that. But they're not in the packaging either, so we're missing out on a footplate crew on this train. So looking down at the running gear, we have this truck at the front. It's quite a simple affair, there's no detail on it, and we have these kind of chromy wheels with red inserts. And this certainly has a lot of movement in it to allow it to get round tight corners, and you can see it also takes with it the coupling at the front, which is a very simple affair, just a little hook there. And then as we move further down the locomotive, you can see the valve gear here. There is a bit of movement in these, but they do look very nice. They've got chrome effect and this red insert. I really like the fact that it's got red inserts on valve gear on German steam locomotives. It's let down a little bit by this cog here, which is obviously part of the gearbox, and it's transfer and drive to the back two wheels here. And then as we move underneath this model, you can see the third rail skid as normal. Now I think these really spoil the look of these models. They have this big piece of metal hanging down, but you can see where the gears attach to the wheels, and you can indeed see that all 6 wheels are driven, and the front two have traction tires on them as well. So looking at the tender, by contrast, this is a very light model. It's obviously not made of metal, it's just a steam locomotive, but it does have some nice detail on here. It has some printed letters here and a lot of rivet detail, and also this kind of texture effect on the moulding and the main part. At the business end of this tender, we have some additional parts moulded in, some really nice pieces of wood effect moulding going on in there, as well as the coal, which is actually looking quite good. I'm looking now at the top of the tender, and you can see that the coal effect is actually rather good on this model. And round the back, you have an indication of 3 lights here, but these aren't lit up like the front. They're just painted silvery white there. And again, you've got the number printed here, which is very clear. And there's also an indication of some steps, handrails, various rivet detail, and these 2 boxes as well. Looking down at the red part, you've got some very delicate steps nicely moulded on there. And you can see some rivet detail and pipework on the main chassis part. But one thing is that these bogies don't move around at all. They're actually just a single moulding, and they're fixed as well. So this is obviously an 8-wheel tender, so it might actually have some problems getting around tighter corners, unless there's a lot of play in these wheels enough for it to move back and forward and allow that to happen. You can see that there's a metal chassis there, and the wheels are held into that metal chassis. And then we've got the buffers, which are integral into chassis, and they had some black paint on the outside edge of them, but on the inside you can see it's still red. So there's obviously some shortcuts being made here to reduce the price of this model. It does come in on their hobby range, so it is a reduced price, but it is looking a little bit cheap in places, this model. Here we have the drawbar link to the main steam locomotive, which has a peg which just fits into here, and that's attached to the metal chassis as well with a screw, as you can see there. So let's have a look at the mechanism. So I think this model just has one screw up on the top that we saw earlier, and I'm going to just take that off just now. While I'm doing this, I'd like to mention that I have a range of train spotting and model railway books on Amazon. Please check them out, there'll be a link in the description below. Any purchase you make helps this channel to grow, so thank you very much. So now that we've got the locomotive apart, you can actually see all the parts that make up this model, and there is an awful lot of it going on here as well. This is the cab end of the locomotive. You can see it has this little switch at the top here, and then you can see these metal gear wheels going down to the wheels down here, and they go up to the motor, which is in this part at the front, just underneath the chimney. You see a coil here, and this is the motor here. And it has the light bulb at the front, which obviously illuminates the 3 lights on the front of the locomotive. So there are many parts on this piece here on the chassis, so that's obviously where all the money has been spent. When you're buying this model, it's all going on this part here. There's a lot of moving parts, and there's a lot of electrics as well, a lot of cabling and little switches and stuff. But whether this works or not, I'm not sure. I don't have a 3-rail system in order to test this out, but I'm going to try and just hotwire it with some power from the H&M controller that I've got. Okay, I've got the model held upside down here. I'm just going to prod it with some power and see what happens. Okay, so my prodding with the power source didn't help at all, and I couldn't get this locomotive working. I think it's something to do with the 3-rail system that I'm not getting. It does say on the box that it does work on the Märklin center rail system, but I thought I could put DC power onto here from my H&M controller and it would work, but it's not working, so I'm wondering whether this is maybe AC power or something. I'm sure one of you guys know more than me. If you do know, can you put it in the comments and let me know so I can see about how to get this locomotive working? And also, I've got a video about a rail car which I thought was broken, and I've taken apart and trying to sort it out. So I'm thinking it's the same setup as this locomotive, and I'm actually just wasting my time by taking it apart. Anyway, I did notice that the light at the front does work on this locomotive when I prodded it with the power, so that's great. So what I'm going to do is put this on the scales and we'll see how much it weighs. So this model weighs 431 grams. Well, we couldn't get this P8 model working today, so it'll remain a mystery about how good it runs, and I'm sorry about that. I was hoping we could get it running and you could see it on this video, but there have been some really nice things on this model that we've had a look at. So some of the things I like about this model include the fact that it's all made of metal, well at least the locomotive is, the tender isn't. And I like the valve gear on here, it looks really cool. It's also got lighting at the front, which I quite like as well. And because the chassis is made of metal, it's got things like these steps at the front of the locomotive, which won't break off as well. They're quite sturdy. Some of the things I don't like though is that it doesn't have any glazing in the cab, and also the tender seems a little bit toy-like. It's quite a simple and cheaply made item, and it really kind of shows it, certainly by the fact that it doesn't have proper articulating bogies on it. And also the coupling that this has got at the back is rather big, and unfortunately on this one it's a little bit rusty as well. And one thing that really lets down Märklin models as they get older is the packaging. The plastic always seems to discolour and then go brittle, and then the model is just not supported at all and can get bashed around quite easily. And that's a real down point of older Märklin models and something that you should be aware of. Thankfully this one's not too bad, and the model is being supported nicely and it doesn't have any damage on it at all. So would I recommend this model to you? I think it's a fairly basic Märklin model. Obviously you're going to have the right setup with the 3-rail system in order to be able to run this. So if you've got Hornby or Pico track, this isn't the model for you. And I also think this isn't detailed enough to be a collector's model, but it is quite an interesting model. It's quite a nice looking steam locomotive, and in the Märklin Hobby range it won't be that expensive to pick up either. So I'll put this on the turntable so you can see all the way around, but let me know what you thought of this video and my analysis of this model in the comments below, and also if you know how to get this working, let me know as well, because I'd love to know. If you did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up, and you can subscribe to see more videos. But that's it for today. See you next time.